Travis Reier and Charlie Potter, the BamaOnline.com staff, on a dreary Wednesday afternoon in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Charlie, Alabama coming off another big win on the road against a fairly strong SEC competitor and the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Injuries this time of year coming out of games like Saturday's, always the prime topic when you look at a team down the stretch. Talk to us a little bit about where Alabama's at. I know a couple of guys came out of that game with some injuries of note.
Yeah, I mean, Kenyon Drake, senior running back, sustained a fractured arm on special teams. You know, that's a tough blow for Alabama, considering that it doesn't have much experience at the running back position outside of he and Derrick Henry, who's obviously had a fantastic year. You know, I don't foresee Drake being back until possibly the bowl game or the college football playoff if Alabama, wins the rest of its games. So that's definitely a big blow, and there's going to have to be some young guys like Damian Harris and Bo Scarborough to step up in his absence. But then also Mika Fitzpatrick, who started every game at Star, he has a sprained knee, and it doesn't sound like he's going to dress this weekend. And we'll see how he progresses after that. But there you have a little bit more, I guess, of a luxury having another five-star recruit or former five-star recruit in Tony Brown to come in, and he played really well against Mississippi State. It's something I think a lot of people had wanted to see out of Tony, and he showed that and stepped in pretty well. Really outside of that, Reuben Foster was a little bit dinged up in that game, but he's been practicing. He has a big club on his hand, and he's going through all the drills, and he should be fine and ready to go. And other than that, I think everything else is pretty peachy on the injury front.
Yeah, the running back position ought to be particularly interesting this week. Obviously, against an FCS opponent, in a perfect world, you take care of business. You get Derrick Henry 8-10 carries maybe this week, get him in the end zone for the 16th straight game, get him out. And then perhaps kind of an open audition between Damian Harris and Bo Scarborough, who the Alabama fan base has obviously been clamoring to see. But as we've talked about at just about every position when you have this type of situation, it's going to come down to trust and the guy that they can count on to do the right thing, play in, play out, whether it's carrying the football, whether it's pass protection, understanding the offense, knowing where to line up. Sounds simple enough, but with young players, it's something you can't take for granted.
Right. I know that Bo is suspended the first 4 games of the season. He didn't get the equal amount of playing time, but we saw when Drake went down with injury, they immediately implemented Damian into the offense, and he was doing a lot of the same things Drake was doing. I think starting off the Mississippi State game was something offensively that we thought Alabama would do from the get-go, where we saw Drake on the field with Henry at the same time out wide at the wide receiver position, and Harris came in and did that too. So that shows that he's getting some of those reps in practice. Bo got his, he got some late in the fourth quarter, but as of right now, and it might just be of practice experience time, that Harris is that guy that they trust.
Could be a situational deal too. If you're trying to run clock in the fourth quarter and you're in that 4-minute offense, but there's really 9 or 10 minutes left, you can pound a guy like Bo Scarborough. Again, though, do you trust him with ball security? Do you trust him in every area of that position? You mentioned it with Tony Brown. I agree. I thought he looked great on Saturday. The most impressive thing to me was that he looked prepared.
Yeah.
When he stepped in, there weren't any issues and busted coverages or missed assignments. Could have had a couple interceptions, was in great position on those plays. He's going to be physical. I compare him to the defensive back version of Reuben Foster because the guy will strike you. So a good situation there, not only because of his talent, but you've got a veteran there in Mo Smith too. If you need to play him, you're right, there's plenty of depth. Senior day coming up for this group. Do you get the sense from the older players that while they've been a part of national championship teams early in their career, closing it out with one of their own, I guess you could say, is of importance to this group?
Yeah, I mean, you can see that they're pretty driven. They like to say they don't pay attention to the rankings, but you see every Tuesday night when they come out, Twitter gets a little bit of buzz with those guys. So they're obviously aware. I don't know necessarily how much they're paying attention to it. I think they know if they take care of business and do what's in front of them, that they have a good shot at getting back there. And then, it's setting up to, if they get there, to be a nice run for them. A team like Oklahoma, who a lot of these guys lost to 2 years ago, that could be a matchup, at the end of the season if the committee leans that way. And then obviously Ohio State's there in the mix. So there's a lot of, I guess, incentive and a little bit of a revenge factor and driving these guys and what they can do later on. But I think you're right. You say, you've won a national championship while you're at Alabama, but how many of those guys actually participated? I mean, you look at it, maybe Geno Smith.
Yeah.
that might be it. And
Yeah, the
so
2012.
these guys definitely want one of their own, and you can see it. I mean, you can see it a lot in the defensive players and the leaders on the team on offense, like Derrick Henry. And they seem, just from interviews alone, they seem pretty driven.
You mentioned Henry. It's not just the seniors that you better get a good glimpse of on Saturday if you want to see them in their final home game. There's some underclassmen on this team too, some juniors, Henry, Ashawn Robinson, maybe Jonathan Allen. You know, I think they probably feel even that sense of responsibility too, because there's a very good chance this is their final run in Crimson. You think so?
Yeah, I mean, I personally thought, just from talking to him and what we've seen from him in his time here at Alabama, Jonathan Allen just seems like one of those guys that's going to come back. He seemed like the Reggie Ragland type until Saturday.
Yeah.
I mean, he went out and, dominated a Mississippi State team who had only allowed, 3 sacks before Saturday. I think even before then, he's made himself a lot of money this season, and it's going to be tough to try to draw him back into the fold just from what he's done on the field. But I've seen from Derrick Henry that's the guy that he just seemed motivated. I mean, he's a guy that's going to take the carries that he gets and make the most of them. But just from his attitude too, he's a guy that you can tell that he knows his time is dwindling here too, and he wants to win a championship.
It's a league of value, the National Football League, and as crazy as it may sound, Jonathan Allen, because he can get after the quarterback, probably has more value as a junior than Reggie Ragland had last year as a linebacker, or maybe even Derrick Henry this year as a running back, because it is all about the quarterback and getting after the quarterback at the next level. So looking at this week, an FCS opponent, obviously, a ranked FCS opponent in Charleston Southern. Obviously a team that you don't want to take too lightly. Ask Auburn with Jacksonville State earlier in the year. I think Alabama, though, in a totally different place than Auburn's been all season long. Even with Auburn's struggles, you wonder if it's hard for this team not to look ahead to next week, because it's still the Iron Bowl. It's still going to be a game played on a big stage, much bigger than this week. Right. Do you sense that they're locked in, though, and they're really on that week-by-week sort of mindset?
I mean, that's what they said. I mean, but what else are you going to expect from them? But I do think that facing a team like Charleston Southern, who's a different offense than what you're used to seeing, it's an offense that is going to throw a lot at you, and it's really key to, be disciplined in your eye discipline this week. And I think it's not the same thing you're going to see in Auburn, but I think it sets up well you're going to have to learn a lot and know a lot, and it's a good test heading into that Iron Bowl. Now, do I think they're looking ahead? I mean, probably, of course, they are a little bit. This is a game that they should win this weekend pretty easily, a game that a lot of younger guys should get playing time. But at the same time, from what they've said, and they've said all the right things, they're taking it one game at a time, and they're looking forward to this weekend just because it is their last game.
Right, no doubt. And I think last year it probably would have been a preparation that set up well for that Auburn offense, because when you watch Charleston Southern on tape, they run a lot of the zone read, zone option, stuff like that. But we don't see that as much from Auburn this year. This isn't Nick Marshall or Cam Newton Auburn. So when you look at you talked about it, the young guys. And if you want to see some young guys, you want to see the future of Alabama football, this should be it. One or two guys that you're kind of most interested in checking out this weekend.
It's kind of cheating, but I want to see what Tony Brown can do, because it was a head scratcher that he wasn't on the field at the beginning of the season, and it does. I mean, it sucks a little bit that it came at the expense of an injury, but we know that Mika's going to be back on the field. I want to see what he can do back in the first-team defense, out there with the first-team defense, to see what he can do. And then sticking on the defensive side, I want to see what a guy like Deshaun Hand can do, because as we've mentioned, there's guys at his position that are probably going to be leaving for the NFL. Not only you have Jonathan Allen, and Ashawn obviously plays defensive end at times, but DJ Petway's not going to be there next year. So this is a time for him to definitely get a lot of snaps. He's a guy that's played in the first quarter and the early games all season long, but he can get a lot of
situational.
Exactly, and you get to see a lot of him, and I think he's going to really benefit from this week.
Tony Brown's interesting because he's been working at safety. Maybe we see him some. You think maybe we see him some at not just star, but maybe at the safety position?
Yeah, I mean, I think once the first team defense comes off the field, he could move to one of the two safety spots. We've seen him there this week. This week is a week where we've actually seen a little bit of that second period that we don't get to see that much. So we've seen a little bit of the nickel and dime packages, although they might not be in those that much this weekend. But he's been back there, beside Ronnie Harrison, and that could be an interesting duo back there at safety.
That's just about going to do it for Charlie Potter. Travis Reier. Keep it right here on BamaOnline.com for more coverage of Crimson Tide football.